Africa, the cradle of humanity, rich with culture, history, and resources. Yet, for centuries, it was held in the grip of colonial powers, exploited for its wealth and its people enslaved in the name of progress. But amidst this darkness, some leaders rose, heroes who dared to challenge the might of Western imperialism, fight for their people's sovereignty, and protect the resources of their lands. The story of Africa's struggle against colonialism is the story of resistance, resilience, and courage. But let's begin with the legacy of colonial borders, artificial lines, drawn on a map that disregarded ethnic, cultural, and historical divisions, and which still haunt the continent today. At the Berlin Conference of 1884, European powers carved up Africa, dividing its people, cultures, and resources into regions that made no sense. These borders didn't consider the complexities of African societies. Instead, they served the interests of colonial powers, creating divisions that continue to cause conflict today. But African leaders refused to let this injustice stand. From the sands of North Africa to the heart of the Congo, heroes emerged who stood tall against colonial forces. Kwame Nkrumah, first president of Ghana, the man who gave Africa its first independent nation. Nkrumah was the voice of Pan-Africanism, believing that only through unity could Africa break free from colonial chains. He knew that the struggle didn't end with independence, and Nkrumah fought to control the economic resources of Ghana and to prevent Western interests from exploiting Africa's wealth. Under his leadership, Ghana took control of its gold mines and cocoa production, asserting its right to use its own resources for the benefit of its people. But this was just the beginning. His call for African unity was a threat to the colonial order, and so he was overthrown, but not without leaving behind a powerful legacy, a seed that would grow in the hearts of other African leaders. Then there was Patrice Lumumba, the first prime minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Lumumba inherited a country rich in natural resource cobalt, rubber, diamonds, but his people lived in poverty. Why? Because the West had come, and they took everything, leaving nothing behind but exploitation and despair. Lumumba understood that the true independence of his people depended not just on political sovereignty, but on economic freedom. When he sought to nationalize Congo's resources and make sure that the wealth of the land benefited its people, the West responded with violence. They supported a coup that led to Lumumba's brutal assassination. Even today, the Congolese people live in poverty, while the cobalt from their land used in smartphones and electric cars fuels the economies of the West. The very mineral that powers the world's technology is mined by children and exploited by foreign corporations. This is the legacy of the colonial system that never truly ended. But there are other leaders who took different paths in their fight for Africa's liberation. Thomas Sankara, of Burkina Faso. Sankara was a revolutionary who took power in 1983 and immediately set about transforming his country, challenging both colonialism and neocolonialism. He named himself Africa's Che Guevara, and his reforms included mass education, women's rights, and an aggressive push to break free from the grip of foreign powers. Sankara nationalized key industries and embarked on a path of self-reliance, believing that Africa's future depended on rejecting Western aid and control. But just like Nkrumah and Lumumba, Sankara paid the price. He was assassinated in 1987, a victim of a conspiracy that involved Western powers, but his ideas have lived on. So, why didn't colonialism end in Africa? Why do the people still struggle under the weight of exploitation and poverty? The answer is simple. Colonialism didn't just end, it evolved. Today, Africa's resources are still being extracted at a staggering rate, but now it's under the guise of foreign investment and globalization. The same companies that profited from Africa's riches during the colonial era still have a stranglehold on the continent today. Africa is still the world's richest land in terms of resources, but its people are among the poorest. Cobalt, diamonds, gold, these are not just materials, they are weapons of exploitation. The question is, what can we do? We can learn from the past. We can honor the sacrifices made by leaders like Nkrumah, Lumumba, and Sankara. We can support African leaders and movements that seek to break free from the cycle of exploitation and build a future where Africa's wealth benefits its own people. Today, Africa is rising. Young leaders, entrepreneurs, and visionaries are taking charge, challenging the legacy of colonialism and fighting for a new African where the people control their own destinies. The 1884 Berlin Conference, often referred to as the Scramble for Africa, was a pivotal moment in African history that fundamentally reshaped the continent's political landscape, creating lasting divisions that still affect Africa today. Held from the 15th of November, 1884 to the 26th of February, 1885, the conference was convened by European powers to regulate the colonization and trade in Africa, without any African representation or input. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 was a defining moment in African history as it set the stage for the exploitation and division of the continent by European powers. The arbitrary borders, lack of African representation, and focus on resource extraction shaped the colonial experience for Africans and laid the groundwork for many of the challenges the continent faces today. The impact of the conference continues to be felt in the political, social, and economic struggles of African countries, many of which are still dealing with the consequences of colonialism over a century later.